Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. On this channel, we deal with AI and AI topics. We try to have an open, honest conversation about what is happening in the AI world and what is going to be coming out in the future when it comes to AI. Now, I encourage us to have a conversation about this, so be sure to comment on this video and let me know if you agree with some of the things I say, or let me know if you disagree. Believe it or not, I read all the comments and I do take these things into consideration. Now, before we get started, my name is Sean and I have a background in the defense industry where I built robotic autonomous devices. I not only wrote the software for them, I programmed the microchips, but I also wired everything. I soldered all the circuits and everything for a lot of the testing we did. Especially my second home was the United States Army Yuma Proving Grounds, where we did a lot of testing on things of mine that I developed that went up into aircraft and they were dumped out of the back of aircraft. The other thing about me is I am a software developer and I have had my own software company for over 20 years. And so I've got a lot of experience in the real world software. I'm not much of a team developer. You know, I don't sit in a cubicle with a bunch of other people and develop, but I work by myself, and that's how I've been successful, is because I see the vision, I make it happen, and I just rely on the other people who make the mechanical parts to get their act together so my stuff can make their stuff work. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio at the very end of this video. I'm not going to bore you with that right now, but I want to jump right into what this video is about. Now, this video is a follow-up to the last video I did, which I called into question the entire AI thing going on right now. I said it was really looking like it's overhyped. Now, most of you guys agreed with me, and some were indifferent, but there were other people that were on opposite ends of the scale. Some said it is not overhyped, that it's far more advanced than even I know, and they told me I don't know what I'm talking about. And then there's others who said, yeah, anybody with half a brain would know this is hyped. And so I just wanted to, on this video, talk about these two opposing views on some of these things, especially from the comments of the last video. You guys are going to find this very interesting because it was really hard to, you know, when you have two opposite sides and you're like, you know, these guys got a point and these guys got a point, but man, they won't give any ground on each other. And I started realizing something. There is something that came to me from the last video that you guys are going to want to know about AI. And let me know if I'm off base on this. Now, one of the things I did in the last video was I complained about LLMs. I really called into question their usefulness. But, you know, I should have been a little bit more specific, because LLMs, for some of you guys, you don't know what they are. They're chatbots. Those are things like Gemini, Grok, ChatGPT, and so forth. And I called into question their usefulness because I was doing an experiment with having them write code. Now, this code is not super complex, but it kind of was. You know, the big picture of what I was trying to write was a little bit complex, but I was basically having them write in PHP and JavaScript. And of course, I know all those languages really well, so I'm able to check their work. But what I wanted to do was just experiment, because I had been hearing about something called vibe coding, and I didn't actually know what it was until somebody in the last video in the comments called me a vibe coder. And I was like, what is that? You know, because I had to look it up, because I got some, I'm not this way, but I got some hippie friends and they're using the word vibe all the time. And I'm like, well, that doesn't fit my world. You know, if I'm coding, I'm not, you know, so I had to look up what is vibe coding. And vibe coding to me looks like, if you don't have any experience writing software, then all you have to do is get on AI and start talking to it and say, I'd like to write a game, or like to write a program that does this. And then you just start working your way through it along the way. And I thought of that and I'm like, well, that's not exactly how I work. I kind of work that way a little bit, but I have a tendency when I develop a project, I have a tendency to structuralize the whole thing and then just to start attacking parts of it so it all starts fitting together. But to be honest with you guys, those of you who are in the software field, you'll know that not everything works perfectly like you want the first time. And I'm not talking about where it has bugs. I'm talking about, when you look at your product and you're testing it, you're like, I think I'll fix that. That's not looking right or moving right or whatever. So, I don't know. I don't know what to think about this vibe coding stuff. That's not really what I do, but I did want to see something, and I'm just letting you guys know about this vibe coding because in my experiment, I was having Grok and ChatGPT, the latest paid versions, the highest paid versions. Both of them kind of tag team on this project, and let's see. I designed a legitimate website that's going to do a lot of things, a lot of code behind the scenes. This was an experiment, but if the experiment succeeds, this website's going to be pretty awesome and it'll be out there. But in the meanwhile, I did get some criticism from people on the other videos saying, you let Grok crash your server. Well, that's what happened. But trust me, I have a lot of other works out there, and there's no way I would let AI touch any of the stuff that brings in my money. Heck no. Heck to the no. So, in that other experiment, I had ChatGPT and Grok working on this thing, and as I would give it each one of them parts of this to work on. And by the way, I didn't say, ChatGPT needs to do this and Grok needs to do this. I actually had them kind of correct each other's mistakes because they kept getting in a loop and not fixing things. And so I'd go over to the other one and say, hey, can you look at Grok's code or can you look at ChatGPT's code? And a lot of times the other chatbot would fix it. So, I just wanted to make a warning to all of you guys who are using chatbots that they're very inaccurate. They create things that are very imperfect and very buggy. And the reason a lot of you guys don't know how bad it is because you're having them create books or papers or text and things like that. Write me this beautiful description of my company or something like that, or a news release. And you guys don't see the errors that they put inside of these things. And you're like, well, how can they put an error in text? They can actually plagiarize somebody out there and pull a sentence or two that is word for word, or a whole paragraph that's word for word of theirs and put it in yours. And then all of a sudden you got legal problems. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I wanted to see how far these things could do as far as code. And in my experiment, they were so horrible at it that, the longer the chat got, then all of a sudden there was learning loss. And learning loss is basically, we've been talking about this thing this whole time. And now all of a sudden later in the chat, it doesn't even remember what it did. It doesn't remember what we did. And that was pretty frustrating. But I learned over time, I needed to kind of figure out, how do you get around that? And one of the things you do is you've got to keep those conversations short. So what I did is I started taking parts of my project and I just said, do this simple thing. And a lot of times it worked out, and then I'm like, well, I'm winning so far. So can you add this one more simple thing? And we'd add like 5 more things. And then a little bit later, it would just get all stupid and ruin everything and throw bugs in there and insert bugs where there weren't bugs. I mean, things that were working stopped working. And then, like I said, Grok went as far as trying to debug. And I figure, well, let's see how far Grok will take it, because I can let you guys know. But Grok, if you guys know nothing about coding, Grok was so bad at debugging that it would get in this loop and it inserted an error. I saw an error on its page. It presented a page of PHP code. I saw the error, but it said, go here, go there. And pretty soon it had me get on the hosting company's settings and, wanted me to modify the htaccess file, which is, long story short, it not only crashed the website, it crashed the server. So any of you guys that don't know what you're doing, if you blindly follow these things down a path, you're going to get hurt, so don't let these things lead you. Now, one of the things you guys really need to know about AI, this is super important. This is something I haven't even told you before, but do you guys know that AI never says to you, I don't know? If you ask it a question, it only tells you an answer, even if it doesn't know the answer. And if it doesn't know the answer, but it always gives you an answer, then it's the wrong answer. They never say, I don't know. They just give you something, so you get a confident answer that is correct, mixed in with other answers that are completely incorrect, and it doesn't ever let you know that it couldn't find an answer in this one thing, but it knew the answer in this other thing. Now, the other thing that happened in the last video, I just need to clarify this. I actually used this calculator that I used decades ago as an example of what it does versus what AI does. And people are, some guys they didn't get the point. They say, well, calculators and LLMs aren't the same. It's like apples and oranges. But that wasn't my point, okay? I'm about to give you some very profound thoughts on this. You guys, this is why you're watching this video, because of what I'm about to tell you. When I have this thing do some math, and it gives me an answer, and it's always correct. I don't have to worry about this thing not being correct. But what I did was I said, well, if this was AI, and I said 1 + 1, it would be like 2. And I said, well, if it's, 5 + 7, it might say 12, or it might say 91 or whatever it feels like. And then it'll do like this follow-up thing. Do you want to know what 7 + 20 is? And I'm like, no, I don't want to know that. But that's how AI acts. So if AI was one of these things, it would drive me so insane. I wouldn't even go to the porch. I'd get up on the roof and I'd throw this thing as far as I possibly could if this thing was AI. Now, some of you guys were laughing at me because I was taking out my frustration on AI. And of course, AI doesn't care. I'm like, I even told it to explain yourself. But that wasn't completely out of anger. What I wanted it to do was analyze, why were you making all these mistakes, Grok? Why were you making these mistakes, ChatGPT? And the answers they gave me were kind of interesting. But anyway, back to the point. This is what you guys need to know. This is the question. This is the thing I want some people to comment on. Am I right, or am I wrong, or am I just a little off, or what? Let me know. A calculator gives you an answer that is correct. AI, it is a probability machine. It looks at the language and it basically gives you what it thinks is a probable good answer. And then something struck me. You know what struck me? What the heck? I mean, this ties into why they're hyping AI. If a calculator is accurate, and if AI is not accurate, it's just going to give you the best guess. It's a really good guesser. It's, a couple of years ago, I called it the drunken librarian. That's why this channel's named this. Because even last year, when you ask it to, a question, sometimes it would come back, it has so much information at its disposal, but it would come back and just present something really goofy. And I thought, man, this thing's acting like it's drunk. This is not drunk. This is a drunken calculator. No, this thing is so predictable. Now, people, who know how AI works, they kind of harp on me a little bit and they say, well, you need to know more about it before you say something about it. That wasn't my point, guys. That was not my point. My point is this. Here it is. This is accurate. AI is not. Therefore, I say to you, AI is good for being kind of like a human and speaking like a human, which is imperfect. But I don't think it's appropriate to use AI for mathematics, for science, for engineering. When you have something present answers in such a random fashion and it's not repeatable, then it's total garbage when it comes to mathematics, science, and engineering. I am not going to develop something, in the engineering field. I'm not going to develop something based on this thing giving me input, but it's random. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rely on this and any computer software that is, no matter what, repeatable. It's always the same answer. It's the correct answer. Why do people think that in the current state of things, AI is going to advance science, advance engineering? Why? It can't even do math. I mean, yes, it can do simple math, but I'm talking about where it comes up with the right answer. When you're talking about trying to do something new, it doesn't know. Its answer is opinionated. It's based on, it's based on probabilities and things like that. And it's also based on its source of truth, which is the data that it digs into or has to present you that answer. And if that data is wrong, if that source of truth that it has is wrong, it throws the answer completely off. Now, one of the things I was going to mention was the source of truth is not the only issue. And some of you guys were, you're trying to tell me that the AI works perfectly for you, but most of us know, if most of us who do any coding, if you're telling me it's working perfectly for you writing software, then most of us know that you're writing something really simple. You're not writing complex systems. And I found that I've had to argue with AI a little bit because even when I have it create some functions, and it can do those functions pretty well, by the way. It's not total garbage. But if I don't fill it in on what else is going on around it, why these functions are needed, it goes badly. And, another thing that's happened to me quite a bit is if I go into Grok and ask a question and present it something, it can get stupid immediately. Like right off the get-go. Now, what caused that? Well, I close Grok and I go back into it and I paste in exactly the same question. And did you know the answer is different? I even deleted the other chat, so it doesn't have a memory of that. But yet, you're getting random chats at the same time. And then I've seen where Grok has changed versions on me right in mid-chat. It'll go from the best one to the older one to, so here's what I want to say. I want to say that as far as the AI industry being overhyped, uh, I'm positive it's overhyped. Now, one of the things that Bill Gates said, not my favorite person, but one of the things Bill Gates said that I think is true is he said when it comes to technology, it under delivers in the beginning. And right now we're in the beginning and it's going to under deliver. Under deliver means it's not going to meet the hype. But he said later on, it always over delivers. So the stuff that's coming after the hype and after this, what I call is coming up as a reset, the stuff coming after that's going to be really advanced. Some scary advanced stuff. But the reason I'm hyping, just harping so much on the LLM chatbots is because with all this hype, those were supposed to be the stepping stone to the next thing. These companies that have these, like Grok and ChatGPT and Gemini. I try not to use Gemini because I'm not a fan of Google. But, these companies, when they put out the latest Grok and ChatGPT 5, I've been testing this whole time, and ChatGPT 4 was better than ChatGPT 5. Some of you guys have noticed that when they released this thing and they said it's even better than the last, they're wrong. The latest version is really crappy. And why would these companies almost uniformly release something worse? I have my theories on that. I think there's some cost cutting going on behind the scenes. They don't want to give the entire general public access to all the GPU power, so they're throttling back users, things like that. But why are we going backwards? So, I think right now, one of the people that commented said one of the most true things. It was such a good metaphor for what's going on with the whole hype, and that is how I explained on the last video. It's like the gold rush. AI is the goal. The chips and the buildings and the power plants are the picks and shovels. Those are the things that are going crazy right now. NVIDIA making chips for AI is insane right now. Their stock is one or if not the most valuable stock, especially on the NASDAQ. And it's driven by AI, not because of AI's success. It's driven by the hype of AI. Therefore, NVIDIA stock goes up and these other things go up. And what this person who commented said, well, it is true. High tide floats all boats. And what he meant by that was, NVIDIA is going crazy. People are investing in that, which also brings up this fake AI. AI is not where they're saying it is. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about government. I'm talking about commercial side. Now, my experience in the past, being in that government circle, I know there are laboratories, buildings with closed off rooms with high security that they have technology in the government for the military and I would say the spy, your intelligence community, your military and your intelligence community. They have stuff in development that is far ahead of anything we've ever seen. But a lot of times they test that for so long that it can take 10, 20 years for it to be released. But when it's released, it's kind of scary. And so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the commercial side of things. And so that's kind of what I wanted to say. See if I have anything else here. Oh, one of the other things that people said was that AI is not causing job loss. Not everybody said that, but there's a few, and I don't know if I can help you guys when you don't think that AI is affecting job loss. It is true that interest rates being high are affecting the economy. I'm not talking about the economy is going down because of AI. I didn't say that. I said there are companies laying off mass amounts of workers and replacing those jobs with AI right now. And what bothers me about that is just what I told you. I said, this is reliable. A computer's reliable. They're replacing people with AI. Now, you can understand that when it comes to telemarketers or customer support, tech support, things like that, because AI just acts like an imperfect human, sometimes gives wrong answers, but systems don't crash. But why the heck are they replacing finance jobs? Why are they replacing accounting jobs? I think those companies, even the software coding companies, the software companies, why are they replacing people with AI? If AI is not repeatable, it's unpredictable. It's not even as good as this. I'm not talking about literally this, where it adds 3 numbers. I'm talking about repeatable, flawless. What's up with that? Why are they replacing jobs with AI that's imperfect? I mean, some of them are going to find out the hard way that they're creating more problems than they solved. But right now, everything's in the name of cost cutting. These companies, they want to get rid of people and trim things down because of money. And AI is a lot cheaper than an employee and complains a lot less. So anyway, that's about it for now. We're at the end of the video, and I'm just going to give you guys an overview, a little bit of what makes me tick. Who am I? Why am I talking about AI? What right do I have to talk about AI or technology? So this is the part where I'll let you guys know some things, some projects that I've been involved in, things like that. So here goes. So in the 1970s, my brother and I grew up in a home where our dad was a metal worker. Our grandfather was a metal worker. And we ended up working in the welding shop all the time and machine shop. So as a young kid, I could run a lathe and a mill, things like that. Never really liked working for my dad and never, I always dreamed of getting out of that. But as my younger brother and I, we were kids. We always had a very strong interest in electronics, all the way, back in the 1970s. And we took apart anything that anybody threw out. If somebody threw out a radio, a TV, we dismantled the thing completely just to see how it worked. And that was our mindset. And then as we got older, and I was in high school, he was in junior high, my first computer was an IBM PC, and my brother's was a Commodore 64. And we both started programming. And I continued on writing programs. I always thought it was fun. I did it for fun all the time. And even when I was in the Army, I always kept writing code. It was fun. And for some of you guys, if you're wondering what I did in the Army, here's what I did. I fired rockets. So a little while after getting out of the Army, there was a time when I was fixing computers, and I just happened to be over at this defense contractor's building. And when I was there, I was working on their computers, but I heard the frustration in there that they were really behind on some technology that was supposed to be tested and was about 2 years behind, and they had to get extensions on it. And so somehow I talked the owner of the company into let me give it a shot, see if I can build this electronic controller. And being that I am who I am, and I also had these weird dreams as a kid, I built this electronic controller that they had teams of people working on for 2 years. I built it in one weekend. And so they tested it at the company, and then immediately the owner of the company uh, offered me a job, insisted I have a job there, and it ended up being a high-paying job. And then not long after that, we went down to the United States Army Yuma Proving Grounds and tested it and worked flawlessly. And then for a few years after that, I worked on more stuff. Most of it was soft landing stuff for military cargo coming out of aircraft. We were testing systems to land the stuff softly so it doesn't all get destroyed when it lands in the battlefield. And then the other thing I worked on there was I worked on something called a AGU, which is an autonomous guidance unit, which I built this device. I didn't do all the mechanical part of it, but I wired this entire thing and I programmed all these microchips. And basically what it did is when cargo would go out of the back of aircraft, military aircraft, my electronics would control the motors and everything going on, and it would actually be just like a paratrooper. It would just control the parachute, and it could go around to different waypoints, and that was really cool. So I was in on that project, a lot of testing for that, and I worked on the Apache helicopter landing gear, which is called ALG, I think it was the name of the program. That was another thing that was right up our alley, because at the defense contractor that I worked on, their specialty was a lot of aircraft stuff, and also had to do with things being accelerated and decelerated, and so that the Apache helicopter thing was if the helicopter comes down really hard, or it comes down like almost crash landing. We were building this robotic smart controller to be in the landing gear to really absorb that shock. And then after that, I worked on what are called G testers. Now, G's, as some of you guys know, is a measurement of gravity, acceleration, and shock. You hear about fighter pilots when they go into dives. They experience X amount of G's and then they black out. Well, a G tester, those that I worked on and built and designed, I didn't build the entire thing. Like I said, I did the electronics and the programming the microchips, and also the software that ran on the computer. And what the G tester did was, there's these big companies, both automotive and aircraft, that they have to test the seatbelt systems. Now, in your car, if you go pull the seatbelt, you pull it slow, it comes out. But if you yank on it, it locks. And it's supposed to do that during a crash. So the G tester was a piece of equipment we had. It was about 4 feet wide. And these companies that made these what are called retraction wheels, which are what you have in your car, they would mount that thing in there and then pull the seatbelt out. And then the machine that I worked on was to simulate a crash. I had to do like a pulse, what's called a pulse. We'd accelerate this thing out super fast to simulate 5 Gs or 10 Gs or 20 Gs, and then just see what it does. And so these companies to this day have these machines at their factories, and they pull one out of every so many reels out and test them, or some of them test every single one. It depends on what it is. And these machines also were used to test the retraction systems on the space shuttle too, for the seatbelts. So I did a lot of that stuff, and I did a lot of stuff. Some of this stuff I'm not going to tell you about because it's I can't. Some things maybe are a little too long and boring, and then other things are humongous projects. You would be surprised I was involved in that. So. But, on a side note, the owner of the company I worked for, He designed the seatbelt buckle that all of you guys, pretty much all of you guys, if you get on a commercial aircraft, I don't care which commercial aircraft, take that seatbelt buckle, flip it over, it says "Am safe." My boss designed that. And so that was kind of my mentor back then. Now, after I left that, because I was gone from home so much, I had 4 small children, I decided that, I need to be home for the kids. I need to help raise the kids. And so I ended up leaving that industry and started a software company. And then in the software company, I specialize mostly in writing CAD software, which some of you guys, that's computer aided design or computer assisted drafting or whatever you guys want to call it. But my CAD software is in use all over the world for the manufacturing field. And then I also got into CNC cutting and things like that. So the software and all that to operate the CNC machines. So that is just a little bit of my background. I understand that some people that comment, they've probably done more than that. But, I'd say that gives me really good footing to talk about technology and AI. So anyway, that's it, guys. Be sure to hit that like button for me, and leave a comment. I appreciate all your comments, except for the ones that I call my wife over and say, "Look at this one." I said, "This looks nasty." She goes, "Yep. That's why I would never put myself out publicly, because I couldn't handle something like that." And I told her, I said, "Well, that person just doesn't know who I really am and may not even care. So there's nothing you can do to fix them." But, guys, anything on this video that you want to add to, I read your comments. And if you disagree, agree, or whatever, or if you go, "You know what, you're saying what I've been seeing this whole time. I'm just glad to hear someone else say it." Let me know about that. So, all right, guys, catch you later. Bye.